The pale sun rose over the rugged Arizona mesas, painting the canyon walls in gold as Sarah Blackwood stood at her cabin door. She heard them before she saw them, the terrified breathing of children, the distant thunder of army horses. In that moment, the half-Apache widow made her choice. Ushering the 5 frightened children inside, she whispered, "My grandmother's blood runs in my veins too." She knew what the cavalry did to Apache children, orphaned, captured, sent east to civilized schools, where their heritage would be stripped away like bark from a pine. The soldiers would arrive within the hour, Lieutenant Hayes leading them, a man who'd once courted her before discovering her mixed blood. Would her songs be enough to hide them, or would her deception cost her everything she had built in this hard, beautiful land? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The pale sun rose over the rugged Arizona mesas, painting the canyon walls in gold as Sarah Blackwood stood at her cabin door. She heard them before she saw them, the terrified breathing of children, the distant thunder of army horses. In that moment, the half-Apache widow made her choice. Ushering the 5 frightened children inside, she whispered, "My grandmother's blood runs in my veins too." She knew what the cavalry did to Apache children, orphaned, captured, sent east to civilized schools, where their heritage would be stripped away like bark from a pine. The soldiers would arrive within the hour, Lieutenant Hayes leading them, a man who'd once courted her before discovering her mixed blood. Would her songs be enough to hide them, or would her deception cost her everything she had built in this hard, beautiful land? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah had come to this canyon 3 years ago after Thomas died. In the silver mine collapse, the homestead had been his dream, a plot of land far from prying eyes, where a half-Apache woman and her white husband could live in peace. She fingered the small turquoise pendant at her throat, the only possession of her grandmother's she had managed to keep. Sarah had come to this canyon 3 years ago after Thomas died in the silver mine collapse. The homestead had been his dream, a plot of land far from prying eyes, where a half-Apache woman and her white husband could live in peace. She fingered the small turquoise pendant at her throat, the only possession of her grandmother's she had managed to keep. The children huddled in the corner of her cabin now, 5 pairs of wary eyes watching her every move. She'd need to get them to the caves soon. Sarah pulled her worn leather journal from beneath a loose floorboard, running her fingers over the pressed wildflowers and Apache phrases written in her careful hand. These pages held memories of a life straddling 2 worlds, never quite belonging to either. "We must be quiet as mice," she whispered in Apache, the words feeling both foreign and familiar on her tongue. "The soldiers cannot find you here." The oldest girl, perhaps 8, stood protectively in front of the others. Her eyes held wisdom beyond her years and suspicion that cut Sarah to the quick. "Why would a white woman help us?" the girl asked in halting English. Sarah knelt down, meeting the child's eyes. "I am not just white. My mother was Apache, like you. Like my grandmother who taught me the old ways in secret." She opened the journal to show the girl a sketch of plants used for medicine. "See, I know our ways." The girl's expression didn't change, but she didn't pull away when Sarah reached for her small hand. Outside, the morning had fully bloomed. Sarah's homestead was coming alive. Chickens clucking in their coop, the milk cow lowing softly from her small barn. She had built this life alone, learning to mend fences and dig irrigation channels from the spring that made this canyon a rare green jewel in the harsh landscape. The garden behind the cabin burst with corn, beans and squash, grown in the traditional Apache way her grandmother had taught her. Nearby stood the small orchard of apple and peach trees that Thomas had started before his death. The canyon itself had been their salvation, remote enough that visitors were rare, with natural features that made defense possible. Hidden caves honeycombed the rock walls, connected by passages that only someone who studied them would know. The springs that bubbled up from deep underground provided water year-round, a precious resource in this dry country. Sarah moved to the window, scanning the distance for dust clouds that would signal riders. Nothing yet, but they would come. Lieutenant James Hayes would make sure of it. Duty-bound, handsome James, who had once brought her wildflowers and spoken of a future together. That was before he'd learned of her Apache blood. She could still see his face the day Caleb Turner from the general store had mentioned it casually, not realizing it was a secret. The way James's expression had shifted from shock to something harder, something she couldn't name. "We need to prepare," Sarah told the children, pushing away the memory. "The soldiers will search here first." She gathered food, water skins, and blankets into a pack while keeping an eye on the horizon. The youngest ones, twin boys, no more than 4 years old, clung to each other. A quiet girl of about 6 watched Sarah with solemn eyes, while a boy of 7 darted curious glances around the cabin. "My name is Sarah," she said softly in Apache. "Will you tell me yours?" The oldest girl straightened her shoulders. "I am Yellowbird," she said finally. "This is Little Fox, Running Water, and the twins are stars that dance together." Sarah nodded solemnly, honoring the introduction. "Your names are strong. They will help you be brave." She touched the turquoise pendant at her throat. "My grandmother was called Bluestone Woman. She gave me this to protect me. Now it will protect all of us." Yellowbird's expression softened just slightly. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a beginning. Sarah rummaged through the small wooden box where she kept her few treasures. Her fingers found the brass cavalry insignia, tarnished now from years of neglect. James Hayes had given it to her on the night he'd first kissed her, beneath the cottonwood. "Trees by the creek. Something to remember me by," he'd said, his voice soft in the darkness. Now it served only as a reminder of society's prejudices, of doors that would forever remain closed to her. She slipped the insignia into her pocket. It might prove useful if confronted by soldiers who didn't know her story. A cloud of dust on the horizon confirmed her fears. Riders were approaching, at least 6, maybe more. Moving quickly, Sarah led the children to the root cellar beneath, the cabin floor. "Stay here until I return," she instructed, lighting a small lantern. "There's water in that jug. If I don't come back by nightfall, take the back tunnel. It leads to the spring cave." Yellowbird nodded gravely, gathering the younger children close as Sarah closed the trapdoor and covered it with a rag rug. Outside, Sarah smoothed her apron and pinched color into her cheeks. The riders were close enough now that she could make out the blue uniforms of the cavalry. Lieutenant Hayes rode at the front, his posture stiff and formal. Beside him was a man she didn't recognize, older, with a cruel set to his mouth and colonel's insignia on his uniform. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she stepped onto the porch, shading her eyes as if curious about unexpected visitors. "Miss Blackwood," Hayes called, raising his hand in greeting as the patrol reached her yard. His voice was formal, betraying nothing of their past. "May we have a word?" "Lieutenant," she replied with a slight nod. "What brings the cavalry to my doorstep?" The older officer nudged his horse forward. "Major Gregory Wilcox, Miss Blackwood. We're tracking a band of Apache renegades. Attacked a supply wagon yesterday. We have reason to believe they passed through this canyon." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "I haven't seen any Apaches, Major. Just the usual coyotes and jackrabbits." Wilcox's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we look around? My land is my own, purchased, legal and proper," Sarah replied coolly. "I'd prefer you stay to the yard. The army has authority to pursue hostiles wherever they may hide," Wilcox countered, his tone hardening. Lieutenant Hayes cleared his throat. "Perhaps Miss Blackwood would allow me to look around while you and the men water the horses, sir. I'm familiar with her property from previous visits." Something flickered in Wilcox's eyes, suspicion perhaps, or cruel amusement. Previous visits, eh? Very well, Lieutenant. You have 10 minutes. The other soldiers dismounted and led their horses toward the stream, while Hayes tied his mount to the porch rail. His eyes met Sarah's unreadable. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Sarah hesitated, then opened the door. The cabin was neat and sparse, a table with 2 chairs, a small cook stove, shelves lined with preserves and dried herbs. Nothing to suggest. She had visitors. "Are you well, Sarah?" Hayes asked, his voice lower now that they were alone. "As well as can be expected," she replied stiffly. "Why are you really here, James?" He removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "There's been trouble. Major Wilcox is new to this territory, eager to make his reputation. He's ordered us to round up all Apaches, hostile or not." "And the children?" Sarah asked carefully. "What happens to them?" A shadow crossed Hayes's face. "East, to the Indian schools." The silence between them stretched taut as a bowstring. "I haven't seen any Apaches," Sarah repeated, meeting his gaze steadily. Hayes looked away first. "Wilcox won't be satisfied with my word alone. He'll send men back to search more thoroughly. Then I'll be ready for them," Sarah said, her hand unconsciously touching the pendant at her throat. "Sarah," Hayes said, stepping closer, "if you're involved in something, I may not be able to protect you. Wilcox is not a man who shows mercy, especially to those he sees as sympathizers." "I never asked for your protection," she replied, the old hurt rising in her throat. "Not since the day you learned what I am." Hayes flinched as if struck. "It wasn't that simple?" "It was exactly that simple," Sarah said. "Now I believe your 10 minutes are nearly up." After the soldiers departed, Sarah waited until their dust trail disappeared beyond the mesa before retrieving the children. As she lifted the trapdoor, 5 pairs of frightened eyes blinked in the sudden light. She helped them climb out one by one, noticing how Yellow Bird counted each child as they emerged, her young shoulders bearing an adult's responsibility. "They've gone for now," Sarah told them, "but they'll be back. We need to learn about each other quickly." From a hidden compartment beneath her bed, Sarah removed a small deerskin pouch, her grandmother's eagle feather medicine bundle. Inside were sacred items, an eagle feather, herbs wrapped in cloth, a small carved stone bear, and a pinch of sacred pollen in a tiny shell. Her grandmother had given it to her for protection, saying the spirits of their ancestors would watch over her through these sacred objects. "This is medicine," she explained, showing the bundle to the children. "Strong protection that my grandmother gave me. Today we will use it to keep us all safe." Little Fox, the 7-year-old boy, stepped forward curiously. Unlike Yellowbird, his wariness was tempered with natural inquisitiveness. "You speak our words," he said in Apache, then switched to careful English. "But you live like white people." "I am both," Sarah replied simply. "My father was a white soldier who loved my mother. My mother was Apache, from the Chiricahua band. When she died, my grandmother taught me our ways in secret." Running Water, the quiet 6-year-old girl, approached the medicine bundle with reverence. Her small fingers hovered over it without touching. "My mother was a medicine woman," she said softly. "She knew the healing plants." Sarah smiled at her. "Then perhaps you can help me gather herbs later. Would you like that?" The girl nodded, the first genuine connection breaking through her reserve. The twin boys, stars that danced together, remained huddled together. At 4 years old, they were too young to fully understand their situation, but old enough to sense danger. One clutched a small rabbit carved from wood, likely a toy from home. "Are you hungry?" Sarah asked, moving to the stove where a pot of bean stew had been simmering. As she ladled food into bowls, Yellowbird finally spoke. "Our camp was at dawn," she said, her voice flat but her eyes swimming with unshed tears. "The soldiers came while most still slept." Sarah stilled, the ladle hovering. "Tell me what happened, child." Yellowbird's story unfolded in broken pieces. Their small band had been camped in a hidden valley 3 days' journey north. They weren't raiders, just families, trying to avoid the reservations. The army had somehow found them at first light. The adults had fought to give the children time to escape. My father told me to take the young ones and run, Yellowbird said. He said to find the canyon with the singing water, that a woman who knows our ways lives there. My grandfather spoke of you, Little Fox added. He said your grandmother was Blue Stone Woman, a wise one from long ago. Sarah felt a chill run through her. Her grandmother had indeed been called Blue Stone Woman in her youth, but she had left her people decades ago. How had stories of her persisted? We ran for 2 days, Yellowbird continued, hiding when we heard horses. The twins couldn't walk anymore, so Little Fox and I carried them. Sarah knelt before Yellowbird, seeing now the scrapes on the girls' legs, the exhaustion etched into her young face. You were very brave, she said gently. All of you were. Yellowbird's composure finally cracked. Are they all dead? She whispered. Sarah touched the medicine bundle. We don't know that for certain. Some may have escaped like you did, but the girl's eyes, too wise for her years, told Sarah she didn't. Believe it. For now, Sarah said, you are safe here and I will keep you safe, I promise. She held out the eagle feather from the bundle. This is a sacred oath. I will protect you as if you were my own children, or die trying. Yellowbird took the feather, holding it reverently. For the first time, Sarah saw something like trust in the girl's eyes. Dawn was just breaking when Sarah heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. She'd been awake most of the night, dozing in short intervals with one ear alert for trouble. The children slept fitfully on pallets near the fireplace, the twins whimpering. Occasionally in their dreams. Wake up, she whispered urgently, touching Yellowbird's shoulder. They're coming back. The girl was instantly alert, helping rouse the others. Sarah had spent the evening preparing for this moment, showing them the hidden passage behind the root cellar that led to the first cave. Now she hurried them toward it, pressing a small bundle of food into Yellowbird's hands. Remember what? I taught you, Sarah said. Follow the passage to the end. Wait for me there. Little Fox paused at the entrance to the tunnel. What if you don't come? Sarah touched his cheek. I will come. Now go, quickly. After securing the hidden door, Sarah rushed to erase all evidence of the children. She swept the floor, straightened the pallets into her own bed, and put away the extra dishes. Just as the riders came into view, she noticed a small wooden toy one of the twins had left behind. She quickly tucked it into her apron pocket. Lieutenant Hayes was at the front again, but this time Major Wilcox rode beside him, with at least a dozen soldiers behind them. Among the cavalry were 2 Apache scouts, their expressions impassive as they surveyed Sarah's homestead. Sarah stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron as if interrupted in her morning chores. Lieutenant Major, she greeted them, coolly. I wasn't expecting visitors so soon. Wilcox dismounted without waiting for an invitation, his spurs jangling as he approached the porch. We're not here for social calls, Miss Blackwood. He unfolded a paper from his pocket, a detailed map of the territory with patrol routes and suspected Apache camps marked in red. Sarah's canyon was circled. Our scouts found signs of Apache passage less than a mile from here. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Many people use the main trail through the canyon, Major. I couldn't tell you who passed by when I'm tending my garden. Wilcox's eyes narrowed. I've authorized a thorough search of your property, Miss Blackwood. Lieutenant Hayes assures me you'll cooperate given your history with the army. Sarah glanced at Hayes, whose face revealed nothing. My father's service doesn't obligate me to allow soldiers to trample my crops, Major. Your father's service, yes, Wilcox said with a thin smile. And your mother's people, where do your loyalties lie there? Before Sarah could respond, Hayes stepped forward. Sir, I'll oversee the search personally. Miss Blackwood can accompany me to ensure nothing is disturbed. Wilcox considered for a moment, then nodded sharply. Very well. Johnson, Martinez, check the outbuildings. Collins, take the scouts and examine the perimeter. Lieutenant, you and Miss Blackwood search the house. As the soldiers dispersed, Hayes followed Sarah inside. Once the door closed behind them, he spoke in a low, urgent voice. "They found child-sized footprints by the stream," he said, "and one of the scouts claims to have seen smoke from your chimney. Late last night, more smoke than one person would need." Sarah busied herself straightening items on a shelf. "I was up late, preserving vegetables. The fire needed to be hot." Hayes moved closer. "Sarah, if you're hiding Apache children, what would you do if I was, James?" she interrupted, turning. "To face him, turn them over to Wilcox, send them east to have their language and customs beaten out of them." His face tightened. "You know I don't make those decisions, but you enforce them," she countered. A shout from outside interrupted them. One of the scouts was pointing toward the ground near Sarah's garden, calling to Wilcox. Hayes gripped Sarah's arm. "If they find evidence—" "They won't," she said with more confidence than she felt. Wilcox appeared in the doorway, his expression triumphant. "Lieutenant, bring Miss Blackwood outside. Our scouts have found something interesting." Sarah's heart pounded as Hayes escorted her to where Wilcox and the scouts were examining the ground. One of the Apache scouts pointed to faint impressions. In the soft earth, small footprints partially obscured but still visible. "Children's tracks," Wilcox said, his eyes cold as he turned to Sarah. "Care to explain?" Sarah's mind raced as she stared at the small footprints near her garden. "Neighborhood children," she said, the lie coming easily. "The Miller family stops. By sometimes when they travel to town, their children play here, while Mrs. Miller trades for my vegetables." Wilcox's expression remained skeptical. "The Millers live 10 miles west. Bit far for a casual visit." "People get lonely out here, Major," Sarah replied. "We take company where we can find it." The Apache scout spoke in his native tongue, gesturing at the tracks. Wilcox turned to him. "What's he saying?" "That these are fresh," the other scout. Translated, "From this morning or last night, and that they are Apache children." Sarah forced a laugh. "How can footprints show if a child is Apache or white? Children's feet are children's feet." "The pattern of movement," the scout explained. His English precise but accented. "Apache children are taught to walk differently. These children were trying to hide their tracks, but didn't know how to fully cover them." Wilcox's hand moved to his sidearm. "Miss Blackwood, I'll ask you once more. Are you harboring Apache fugitives?" Lieutenant Hayes stepped between them. "Sir, even if children were here, they're clearly gone now. The tracks lead toward the main trail." "Then we'll follow them," Wilcox snapped. "And you," he pointed at Sarah, "are confined to your cabin until our search is complete. 2 men will remain to ensure you don't warn anyone." Within minutes, most of the cavalry had ridden out, following the false trail Sarah had created during the night, footprints that led away from the hidden caves and toward the distant hills. Only Hayes, Wilcox, and 2 privates remained. "I'll stay with Miss Blackwood," Hayes volunteered. "The men can join you once the perimeter is secured." Wilcox studied him for a long moment. "Very well, Lieutenant. But remember where your duty lies." He mounted his horse and addressed the privates. "Secure the outbuildings, then catch up with the main group." As Wilcox rode away, Hayes turned to Sarah. "That was too close," he muttered, guiding her back to the cabin. Once inside, Sarah sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. "Thank you," she said quietly. Hayes paced the small room. "Don't thank me yet. Wilcox has established a camp 2 miles east of here. They'll be searching this entire area for days." "Why are you helping me?" Sarah asked, watching him carefully. Hayes stopped pacing, his expression troubled. "Because what's happening isn't right. These sweeps, the children being sent east." He shook his head. "It's not what I enlisted for." From her pocket, Sarah withdrew a carved wooden stick about the length of her hand. Symbols had been etched into its surface, her grandmother's song stick, used to remember the sequence of sacred songs. "I need to reach the children," she said. "They're frightened, alone in the caves." "The caves?" Hayes looked alarmed. "There are caves nearby?" Sarah studied him, making a decision. There's a network of them throughout the canyon. That's where they're hiding. Hayes ran a hand through his hair. If Wilcox finds them— He won't, Sarah interrupted. Not if I can teach them the dawn. Songs. The what? Sarah traced the symbols on the stick. Sacred songs my grandmother taught me. They're sung at dawn to harmonize with the world's awakening. They can protect those who know them. Hayes looked skeptical. Songs won't stop Wilcox's men. Not directly, Sarah agreed. But they teach movement without sound. Breathing that leaves no trace, becoming one with the canyon so eyes pass over you. She stood. I need to reach them tonight. Impossible, Hayes said. The men will be watching. Not if you help me, Sarah countered. Create a distraction after dark, something to draw them away for just half an hour. Hayes hesitated. If I'm caught helping you, then don't get caught, Sarah said simply. As dusk fell, Hayes left to check the perimeter, promising to return. Sarah waited anxiously, the songstick clutched in her hand. Just when she feared he wouldn't come through, a commotion erupted near the corral, shouting about loose horses. Sarah slipped out the back window while the guards ran to help. Moving silently as her grandmother had taught her, she made her way to the hidden cave entrance nearly half a mile from the cabin. The night embraced Sarah as she moved through the canyon, her footsteps as silent as a deer's. The moon was mercifully dim, providing just enough light to see without exposing her to distant watchers. She carried a small pack containing food, water, and the precious song stick. From her pocket, she withdrew a carefully folded piece of parchment, her hand-drawn map of the hidden canyon paths. Unlike official maps that showed only the main trails, Sarah's detailed every hidden path, cave entrance and water source in the canyon system. She had begun drawing it the first month after Thomas died, when exploring the canyon's secrets had been her only solace. When she reached the hidden entrance, a narrow crevice behind a juniper thicket, Sarah paused, listening for pursuers. Hearing nothing but night insects and the occasional hoot of an owl, she slipped sideways through the opening. "Yellow bird," she called softly once inside. "Little fox?" A small stone clattered nearby, and Yellowbird emerged from the shadows, a sharp rock clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You came," the girl said, lowering the stone. "I promised I would," Sarah replied. "Are the others all right?" Yellowbird led her deeper into the cave, where the remaining children huddled together. The twins were asleep, curled against each other like puppies. Running Water was awake, but silent, her eyes reflecting the faint light from Sarah's small lantern. Little Fox sat apart, keeping watch from a higher ledge. "The soldiers?" Yellowbird asked. "Still searching," Sarah answered, "but not in the right places. Not yet." She opened her pack, distributing dried meat and pieces of cornbread. As the children ate hungrily, Sarah unfolded her map. "We cannot stay here," she explained, pointing to their location. "This cave is too close to the main trails. We need to move deeper into the canyon system, to here." Her finger traced a path to a more secluded cave nearly 2 miles away. "Why would you risk yourself for us?" Yellowbird asked, her young voice weighted with adult suspicion. Sarah touched the turquoise pendant at her throat. "Because we are the same people, child, and because it's right." As the children finished eating, Sarah withdrew the songstick. "Tonight, I will teach you the first dawn song. It will help us move without being seen or heard." The children gathered around, even the sleepy twins now awake and attentive. Sarah began to sing softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The melody was unlike anything in the white man's music. It rose and fell like the canyon winds, sometimes seeming to come from the rocks themselves. "Dawn breaks on the eastern rim," she sang in Apache. "Light touches stone, awakens life. I am the shadow before the sun, moving with the earth's breath." She taught them to match their breathing to the rhythm of the song, to step only where shadows fell, to move with the natural patterns of the canyon rather than against them. "This is how our ancestors traveled unseen," she explained. "The song reminds us to become part of the land, not separate from it. Little Fox caught on quickly, his natural grace making the movement seem effortless. Running Water was hesitant but determined. Yellowbird watched Sarah closely, memorizing every gesture, every note. Even the twins tried to mimic the gentle, swaying motion. Before dawn, Sarah told them, we will move to the deeper cave. We'll travel singing this song, placing our feet as I've shown you. The soldiers have dogs, Yellowbird said. They will smell us. Sarah smiled. That's why we sing. The song teaches us to walk where our scent is carried away by the dawn breeze, to touch plants that will mask our smell. As the night deepened, Sarah continued the lessons, showing the children how to walk without disturbing stones, how to brush against aromatic sage and juniper to mask their human scent, how to move with the shadows rather than through them. Just before the first hint of dawn, Sarah gathered her small band. It's time, she whispered. Remember the song, follow me exactly as I've shown you. They emerged from the cave into the silver pre-dawn light. Sarah began the song, her voice barely audible even to those right beside her. The children joined in, their small voices blending with hers as they moved like shadows along the canyon wall. The journey to the deeper cave tested every skill Sarah had taught the children. Twice they froze in place as cavalry patrols passed in the distance, the soldiers' eyes sliding over their motionless forms nestled against rock formations. The dawn song seemed to wrap them in a cloak of invisibility. Not magic, Sarah knew, but the ancient wisdom of becoming one with the landscape. By the time the sun fully crested the canyon rim, they had reached their destination, a deep, dry cave with a narrow entrance that widened into several chambers. A small seep in the back provided fresh water, and natural chimneys allowed smoke to disperse without revealing their location. We'll be safe here, Sarah told the exhausted children. Rest now. I must return to the cabin before they discover I'm missing. Yellowbird grabbed her arm. You're leaving us? I must, Sarah explained gently. If I disappear, they'll know something is wrong and search harder, but I'll return tonight with more supplies. The girl's face hardened with understanding beyond her years. We will be ready if they come. Sarah touched Yellowbird's cheek. Sing the dawn song if you hear anyone approach. Remember what I taught you. The return journey was more dangerous in full daylight, but Sarah used every trick her grandmother had taught her, moving from shadow to shadow, freezing in place when necessary. When she finally reached her cabin, she was relieved to find only one guard dozing on her porch. She slipped in through the back window she'd left unlatched, quickly washing trail dust from her face and hands before making enough noise in the kitchen to wake up naturally. The guards startled at the sound of the clattering dishes. By midday, Lieutenant Hayes returned with Major Wilcox. The search had been fruitless. The tracks had disappeared at a rocky plateau miles from the canyon. Those Apache scouts of yours aren't worth their pay, Wilcox growled. They lost the trail completely. Hayes caught Sarah's eye briefly. Perhaps there was never a substantial trail to follow, sir. Wilcox paced Sarah's small front room like a caged mountain lion. I know those children passed through here, Miss Blackwood. And I suspect you know more than you're telling us, Sarah continued calmly, kneading bread dough at her table. As I told you, Major, the Miller children visit occasionally. I cannot help what your scouts choose to see in footprints. The Major slammed his fist on the table, sending a cloud of flour into the air. Do not test my patience. Harboring enemies of the United States Army is treason. Sir, Hayes intervened, we have no proof Miss Blackwood has done anything wrong, and we're expected back at Fort Whipple by the end of the week. Wilcox glared at him. We're not leaving until I'm satisfied, Lieutenant. Post double guards tonight. No one enters or leaves without my knowledge. After they departed, Sarah continued her daily chores under the watchful eyes of the guards. As dusk approached, she wondered how she would reach the children with supplies. As promised, the answer came unexpectedly when Caleb Turner's supply wagon arrived from town. Miss Blackwood, he called cheerfully, tipping his hat to the soldiers. "Got your monthly order here." The soldiers inspected his wagon thoroughly before allowing him to unload flour, coffee, and other staples. As he carried a crate into her, "In kitchen," he whispered. "Lieutenant Hayes sent me. Said you might need some things delivered elsewhere after dark." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "The canned peaches go on the top shelf," she said loudly, then whispered back, "The far canyon. Gave 5 children food and blankets." Caleb nodded almost imperceptibly. After the wagon departed, Sarah found something tucked between the flour sacks, a carved wooden flute, similar to one her grandmother had owned. A small note was wrapped around it. "For the songs. J. Sarah's." Hands trembled as she held the flute. Her grandmother had used such an instrument to accompany the dawn songs, its ethereal notes enhancing the song's power. She had described it to Hayes only briefly during one of their courtship walks, never expecting him to remember, much less provide one when she needed it most. That night, Sarah pretended to sleep while listening to the guards' movements outside. Around midnight, she heard a distant owl call. 3 hoots, pause, 2 hoots, the signal Caleb and she had arranged in town when communication was necessary. Relief flooded through her. The children would receive supplies tonight. Tomorrow, she would find a way to bring them the flute and teach them the second dawn song, the one that would help them remain undetected even when pursued directly. 3 days passed with the cavalry maintaining their presence in the canyon. Sarah managed to visit the children only once, slipping away during a brief thunderstorm that provided cover for her movements. She brought the flute, teaching them how its notes enhanced the dawn songs, making the protective rhythms more powerful. On the 4th morning, Sarah rose before dawn as usual. The guards had grown complacent, no longer watching her every move. She took advantage of this to stand on her porch, seemingly enjoying the pre-dawn air while actually studying the distant mesas. Something had been nagging at her since her conversation with the children. Little Fox's mention that others from their band might have survived. From her apron pocket, Sarah withdrew a small polished metal mirror, another tool her grandmother had taught her to use. The signal mirror could flash messages across great distances if one knew the code. Sarah had used it rarely, mostly to communicate with Thomas when he was working distant parts of their land. Tilting the mirror carefully to catch the first rays of the rising sun, Sarah sent a simple message. 3 quick flashes. Pause. 2 long flashes, the traditional Apache greeting between friendly bands. She repeated it 3 times, directing the signal toward the northern mesa where Little Fox believed survivors might be hiding. Long minutes passed with no response. Sarah was about to give up when a faint glint caught her eye. 3 quick flashes from a distant ridgeline. Her heart leaped. Someone was alive out there. Sarah continued the exchange, using the simplified code her grandmother had taught her. The responses were hesitant at first, then more confident as the sender recognized the traditional patterns. "Children safe," Sarah signaled. "How many?" came the reply. 5. Yellow bird, little fox, running water, twin stars. A pause, then, "Soldiers. Many," Canyon watched. "We come soon." "No," Sarah flashed urgently. "Too dangerous. Need plan." A soldier's voice startled her. "Beautiful sunrise, isn't it, Miss Blackwood?" Sarah nearly dropped the mirror, but managed to slip it into her pocket as she turned. Lieutenant Hayes stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Yes, quite lovely," she replied, hoping he hadn't noticed her signaling. Hayes stepped closer, speaking quietly. "If you're attempting to contact someone, you should know the Eastern Ridge has been under observation since yesterday." Sarah's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do," Hayes said, his voice still low. "Fortunately, I relieved the regular observer an hour ago. No one else saw your sunrise appreciation." Their eyes met in a moment of silent communication. Once again, Hayes was offering protection she hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. Thank you, she murmured. Hayes glanced toward the distant ridge. Whoever you were signaling should be warned. Major Wilcox has sent for Apache scouts from Fort Apache, men who know every hiding place in these canyons. They arrive tomorrow. Why? Won't tell me this, Sarah asked. Hayes looked troubled. Because I've seen how Wilcox operates. 2 days ago his men found a single Apache man, an old one, harmless, gathering medicinal plants. Wilcox had him shot rather than taken prisoner. He met her eyes. I didn't enlist to murder old men or hunt children. Sarah studied him, weighing her next words carefully. The children told me their camp was attacked at dawn. Women and elders were among the first killed. Hayes paled slightly. Wilcox told us it was a warrior camp that had raided settlements. He lied, Sarah said simply. A heavy silence fell between them. In the distance, a faint flash caught Sarah's eye. More signals from the hidden Apache band. I should go, Hayes said, turning away. I never saw anything this morning. But Sarah, he paused. Be careful. Wilcox suspects you. He's just looking for proof. After he left, Sarah waited until the guard changed before quickly signaling again to the distant mesa. New scouts coming. Know all caves. Need new hiding place. The response came promptly. Night signal, 3 fires, we guide you. That evening, Sarah prepared a pack with supplies while planning how to reach the children unseen. The cavalry patrols had established a pattern she could exploit, but getting 5 children across open ground to the northern mesa would be nearly impossible without help. That night, as Sarah prepared to slip away to the children, a soft knock at her back door startled her. Hand trembling, she reached for the kitchen knife before cautiously approaching the door. Who's there? She whispered. It's Hayes, came the hushed reply. Sarah opened the door just enough to see his face in the moonlight. He was alone, his uniform jacket missing, dressed instead in a dark shirt that blended with the night. May I come in? He asked. Sarah hesitated, then stepped aside. Hayes entered quickly, glancing around to ensure they were truly alone. I don't have much time, he said, withdrawing a folded document from inside his shirt. This arrived by courier an hour ago. Wilcox didn't want anyone else to see it, but I was present when he read it. Sarah unfolded the paper. Official military orders with the army seal clearly visible. As she scanned the document, her blood turned to ice. A final sweep of the canyon. She read aloud. All hostile elements to be eliminated. No prisoners. Expected. She looked up at Hayes. This is an extermination order. Hayes nodded grimly. It authorizes Wilcox to clear the entire canyon system of hostile Apache presence by any means necessary. They're bringing in 4 more companies to ensure nothing escapes. When? Sarah's voice was barely audible. The reinforcements arrive day after tomorrow. The sweep begins at dawn the following day. Hayes pointed to a map attached to the orders. They'll move from south to north, driving anyone hiding toward the blockade positioned here. His finger tapped the northern end of the canyon. The very place your friends are signaling from. Sarah sank into a chair, her mind racing. I need to get the children out tonight. Not possible, Hayes said. Wilcox has doubled the patrols after dark. Even I was questioned just coming to your cabin. Then what do you suggest? Sarah asked, frustration edging her voice. Hayes hesitated. I can help you, but you need to trust me fully. No more half-truths between us. Their eyes met in the dim lamplight. So much history, so much hurt between them. Yet in this moment, Sarah knew she had no choice. The children are in the eastern deep cave, she said. The one with the double entrance. I've been teaching them the dawn songs to help them move undetected. Hayes looked confused. The songs your grandmother taught you. How will singing help? Them escape armed soldiers. They're more than just songs, Sarah explained. They're ancient teachings about moving with the land, using the dawn light and shadows, masking scent and sound. My grandmother called them the invisible path. Hayes didn't look convinced, but he nodded. The Apache scouts arriving tomorrow are from White Mountain Band. They know this canyon system better than any of Wilcox's men. Can you delay them? Sarah asked. Not without raising suspicion, Hayes replied. But I can volunteer to lead them. Perhaps direct the search away from the children initially. Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling a dull ache building behind her eyes. The children. Running Water has fallen ill. A fever that comes and goes. She's too weak to travel far or fast, Hayes frowned. That complicates things. He was silent for a moment, then asked, The Apache band signaling you, how many are they? I don't know exactly. The children believe. It's the remains of their band, perhaps a dozen warriors, and some elders who escaped the initial attack. Not enough to fight 4 companies of cavalry, Hayes said grimly. They don't want to fight, Sarah insisted. They just want to escape north, to reach their cousins in the mountains. Hayes studied the orders again. There's a narrow window. Wilcox is sending scouts to survey the northern blockade position tomorrow. I've been assigned to lead them. He met Sarah's eyes. If the children could reach this point, he indicated a spot on the map, I could ensure the scouts are looking elsewhere for those few hours. That's nearly 5 miles across open country, Sarah protested. It's the only section that won't be heavily patrolled tomorrow, Hayes countered. Once the full sweep begins, there will be no gaps. Sarah stared at the map, considering their limited options. I'll need to leave tonight, bring medicine for Running Water, and prepare them to move by tomorrow afternoon. Hayes stood. I should go before I'm missed. He hesitated at the door. Sarah, I'm sorry. About everything. She looked up at him, seeing regret etched in the lines of his face. We can't change the past, James, but perhaps we can still do what's right now. The night wrapped Sarah in shadows as she made her way to the children's hiding place. Hayes had arranged for the guard nearest her cabin to be called away briefly, giving her the precious minutes needed to slip into the darkness. She carried a heavier pack than usual, extra food, blankets, and most importantly, medicine for Running Water. When she reached the cave, she found the children huddled around the small girl, who lay shivering despite the mild night. Her skin burned with fever, her breathing shallow and rapid. How long has she been this way? Sarah asked, kneeling beside Running Water. Since yesterday, Yellowbird answered. She was better, then worse again. Sarah examined the child carefully. This was no ordinary fever. The symptoms reminded her of something her grandmother had described, a sickness that came from particular plants in the canyon, if prepared incorrectly. Has she eaten anything I didn't bring? Sarah asked. Little. Fox looked guilty. She was hungry. I found berries, like the ones my mother used to gather. Sarah's heart sank. Show me. The boy produced a few shriveled red berries from a pouch. Sarah recognized them immediately. They resembled edible canyon berries, but were actually a poisonous variety that grew in shadier locations. It's not your fault, she assured Little Fox. They look very similar. Sarah rummaged through her pack, but the herbs she'd brought wouldn't be strong enough. Running Water needed medicine from the sacred spring, water and specific plants that grew only in that protected place. I need to take her to the healing spring, Sarah told Yellowbird. It's the only way. The soldiers will see, Yellowbird protested. Not if we go now using the Third Dawn song, Sarah replied. Can you and Little Fox care for the twins until we return? Yellowbird straightened, accepting the responsibility. We will be ready to move when you come back. Sarah wrapped Running Water in a light blanket and lifted her. The girl was alarmingly hot against her chest, weighing little more than a newborn fawn. Slipping out of the cave, Sarah began the Third Dawn song under her breath, the one that taught moving through water without leaving tracks. The sacred spring lay in a hidden grotto halfway up the canyon wall, accessible only by a narrow, winding path that remained invisible unless one knew exactly where to look. Sarah had discovered it months after Thomas died, drawn to it by a dream so vivid it had felt like her grandmother calling to her. As she climbed, Running Water stirred in her arms. Mother? The girl whispered deliriously. Shh! Shh, little one, Sarah soothed. We're going to make you better. The path grew steeper, more treacherous in the darkness. Sarah's muscles strained with the effort of carrying the child while maintaining her footing. A slip here would mean a deadly fall onto the rocks below. The song helped her focus, placing each foot precisely where it needed to be. Finally, the path opened onto a small plateau, sheltered by an overhanging cliff. At its center bubbled a spring no larger than a washtub, surrounded by unusual plants that thrived in its mineral-rich water. The Apache believed the spring had been created by the Great Spirit as a gift to their people in times of hardship. Sarah laid running water on a flat rock near the spring and retrieved a clay vessel hidden in a nearby crevice. Her grandmother had taught her that metal containers would taint the spring's medicine, so Sarah kept a traditional Apache water vessel here for emergencies. Kneeling beside the spring, Sarah sang the healing song her grandmother had taught her. Different from the dawn songs, this one called to the spirits of the plants and water to lend their strength to the sick. She gathered specific leaves and roots growing around the spring's edge, crushing them between smooth stones before adding them to the water. Great Spirit who flows through all living things, she prayed in Apache, lend your strength to this child. Her path is not yet complete. She bathed Running Water's face and limbs with the sacred water, then helped her drink small sips. Traditional medicine would either work quickly or not at all. By dawn, they would know. As the night deepened around them, Sarah continued the healing rituals, singing softly while applying poultices to Running Water's forehead and chest. The girl's breathing gradually eased, her skin cooling slightly beneath Sarah's touch. Near midnight, Running Water opened her eyes. "The water sings," she murmured in Apache. Sarah smiled, relief flooding through her. "Yes, little one, the water sings healing songs. I hear them now," Running Water whispered, "like my mother taught me." Sarah remembered what the girl had said earlier, that her mother had been a medicine woman. "Your mother knew these songs." Running Water nodded weakly. "She brought me here once, when I was small." A connection formed in Sarah's mind. "Was your mother called Singing Rain?" The girl's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Singing Rain was my grandmother's closest friend," Sarah explained, dabbing Running Water's forehead with the healing spring water. "They learned the medicine ways together as girls." Dawn was approaching as they made their way back to the cave. Running Water now able to walk with Sarah's support. The girl's fever had broken, though she remained weak. As they neared the cave entrance, Sarah froze. Fresh footprints marked the earth outside, too large to belong to the children. Pulling Running Water behind a boulder, Sarah peered cautiously toward the cave. A shadow moved near the entrance. Tall, distinctly adult. Sarah's heart hammered. Had the soldiers found them? "It is Grey Wolf," Running Water whispered. "An elder of our band." Sarah hesitated, still wary. "How can you be sure?" "I see his sacred pipe," the girl replied. "Only he carries one with the eagle and bear carvings." Looking more carefully, Sarah could make out an elderly Apache man standing near the cave entrance. He indeed carried a ceremonial pipe, its polished wooden stem catching the first rays of dawn. Yellowbird stood beside him, her posture conveying both respect and caution. "He has found us through the night signals," Running Water explained. Sarah approached slowly, making enough noise to announce her presence without startling anyone. Yellowbird spotted her first, pointing her out to the elder. "Bluestone Woman's granddaughter," the elder said in Apache as she drew near. His weathered face showed no surprise, as if he had expected her all along. Sarah bowed her head respectfully. "I am Sarah Blackwood," she replied in Apache. "How do you know of my grandmother?" I am Grey Wolf," he said. "Your grandmother and I were young together before she left with the white soldier." He gestured toward Running Water. "You have healed the child with the old ways." "I took her to the sacred spring," Sarah confirmed. "She was poisoned by false berries." Grey Wolf nodded sagely. "The spring recognized your blood. It would not have yielded its medicine to one without Apache spirit." Inside the cave, Sarah found a younger Apache man, perhaps 30 years old, speaking quietly with Little Fox. The twins huddled nearby, watching the newcomers with wide eyes. "This is Swift Knife," Grey Wolf introduced the younger man. "He leads our warriors now, that many have fallen." Swift Knife regarded Sarah with undisguised suspicion. "Why would a white woman help Apache children? What do you gain?" Before Sarah could answer, Yellow Bird stepped forward. "She has protected us when others would not. She teaches us the dawn songs and moves like shadow to bring us food." Swift Knife remained unconvinced. "The soldiers search everywhere. Why have they not found you in her land?" "Because I am not just white," Sarah replied firmly. "My mother was Apache. My grandmother taught me the old ways, the songs that hide our passage." Grey Wolf lifted his sacred pipe. "We will know the truth of your heart." What followed was a ceremony Sarah had only heard described by her grandmother. Grey Wolf prepared, his pipe with a mixture of tobacco and sacred herbs, offering it first to the 6 directions: east, south, west, north, sky, and earth. He spoke prayers in the ancient dialect few still remembered, asking the ancestors to reveal truth and guide their path. Sarah sat cross-legged before him, accepting the pipe when offered. As she inhaled the sacred smoke, Grey Wolf studied her eyes. "What do you see when you look at these children?" he asked. "I see the future of our people," Sarah answered without hesitation. "I see strength that must be protected, wisdom that must be nurtured, traditions that must survive." "Our people?" Swift Knife questioned sharply. "You live in a white woman's cabin with white woman's things." "I have lived between 2 worlds all my life," Sarah replied, "never fully accepted by either. These children face the same fate unless we preserve their connection to their heritage." Grey Wolf raised his hand for silence. "There is a greater test," he turned to the children. "What do you see when you look at this woman?" Yellowbird answered first. "I see someone who sings the songs my grandmother sang, who knows the plants my mother knew." Little Fox nodded eagerly. "She walks like us, not like white people. She understands the canyon spirits." Even the twins added their simple testimony. "She makes us not afraid." Grey Wolf turned to Running Water, who had been silent throughout the exchange. "And you, daughter of Singing Rain, what do you see?" The girl met Sarah's eyes. "I see my mother's friend. The stories say Bluestone Woman had a granddaughter who would return to her people when they needed her most. A bridge between worlds." She touched her chest where the healing poultice remained. "She knows the sacred spring. It would not heal through her hands if her spirit was false." Grey Wolf nodded slowly, then stunned Sarah by speaking in perfect English. "Your grandmother predicted this day would come. She saw it in a dream before she died." Back at her cabin, Sarah found 2 soldiers waiting on her porch. Their faces showed a mixture of suspicion and relief at her appearance. "Miss Blackwood," the senior private addressed her, "Lieutenant Hayes has been looking for you. Said to tell you he needs to speak with you urgent-like when you return." "I was gathering herbs at dawn," Sarah explained, holding up a basket of plants she'd collected on her way back. "Best time for it." The soldiers exchanged glances, but asked no further questions. One departed immediately, presumably to inform Hayes of her return. Inside, Sarah quickly prepared for whatever might come next. She changed her dirt-stained dress, concealed her grandmother's medicine pouch beneath her clothes, and tucked the signal mirror into her pocket. The conversation with Grey Wolf had changed everything. They had agreed on a plan to move the children tonight, using the distraction Hayes would provide during the scouting mission. Grey Wolf's revelation about her grandmother's prophecy still echoed in her mind. Apparently, Bluestone Woman had foreseen this moment decades ago, her granddaughter standing between the Apache children and those who would destroy their way of life. "The Between Worlds Woman will sing the dawn back to our people," Grey Wolf had quoted from the prophecy. Lieutenant Hayes arrived an hour later, his expression grim. He requested to speak with her privately, and once they were alone in her kitchen, he withdrew a folded paper from his jacket. This was intercepted. "This morning," he said, placing it on the table between them. It was addressed to Major Wilcox. Sarah unfolded the paper, her blood running cold as she read, "Major Wilcox, I feel it my duty to inform you that Sarah Blackwood has been acting suspiciously these past days. On multiple occasions, I've observed her leaving her cabin before dawn and returning with signs of having traveled some distance. I believe she may be harboring the Apache children you seek, or assisting their band in evading capture. I have done business with Miss Blackwood for years, and have noticed her unusual interest in Apache ways. She keeps company with no one in town since rejecting my proposal last spring. Your devoted servant, Caleb Turner Sarah, stared at the signature in disbelief. Caleb? But he helped us. He delivered supplies to the children. A calculated risk. On his part, Hayes explained. He suspected you were hiding something but wasn't certain. By offering help, he confirmed his suspicions without revealing his true intentions. Why would he do this? Sarah asked, still stunned by the betrayal. Jealousy, partly, Hayes replied. He's made no secret of his interest in you. Seeing us together again likely pushed him to action. Sarah's mind raced. Has Wilcox seen this? Not yet, Hayes assured her. I intercepted it when a private brought it to our camp. No one else has read it. Thank you, Sarah said quietly. She hesitated, then made a decision. James, I need to tell you everything now. Over the next few minutes, Sarah explained about Grey Wolf's arrival, the sacred ceremony, and their plan to move the children that night. Grey Wolf believes he can lead everyone safely to the Northern Territories if they can get past the initial sweep, she concluded. They'll use the hidden pass through Three Sisters Mesa. Hayes paced the small kitchen. Wilcox is suspicious. Already. When you weren't here this morning, he wanted to organize a search party. I convinced him you were probably just gathering plants. We need to move the children tonight, Sarah insisted. Once those Apache scouts arrive tomorrow, that's another problem, Hayes interrupted. They arrived early. They're setting up camp with Wilcox now. The sweep has been moved up to tomorrow at first light. Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her. Everything was happening too quickly. Then we have no choice. We move tonight. Hayes nodded grimly. I'll lead the Northern scouting party at dusk. I can ensure we're far from your planned route, but Sarah, he gripped her hands, if you're caught, Wilcox will show no mercy. Not to you, not to the children. I know, she replied, but we have no alternative. There is one, Hayes said, his voice dropping. I could help you escape too. We could take the children north together, find somewhere safe. Sarah stared at him, momentarily speechless. You would desert? Throw away your career? Your life? What life? He asked bitterly. Following orders I don't believe in, participating in the destruction of an entire people. He squeezed her hands. I was a fool to let you go once because of what others might think. I won't make that mistake. Again. Before Sarah could respond, a sharp knock at the door startled them both. Hayes released her hands and moved away as Sarah called, Enter. A young private appeared, looking nervous. Lieutenant, Major Wilcox requests your immediate presence. Sir, the Apache scouts have found something. Sarah paced her cabin for hours after Hayes left, anxiety gnawing at her. What had the Apache scouts found? Had they discovered the children's hiding place? As dusk approached, she prepared to leave for the cave, regardless of the risks. Just as she was gathering her pack, a soft whistle outside her window, 3 notes rising, 2 falling, signaled Grey Wolf's presence. Sarah slipped out the back door to find not only the elder waiting, but also Swift-Knife and another warrior. We must move now, Grey Wolf said without preamble. The scouts have found signs near the eastern caves. The children, Sarah began, are safe, Swift-Knife assured her. We moved them to the high canyon at midday. Relief flooded through Sarah. Lieutenant Hayes was called away suddenly. The scouts found something. Old tracks only, Grey Wolf explained, "but they will search more thoroughly by morning." As they spoke, Grey Wolf removed something from beneath his blanket, an elaborately decorated headdress with eagle feathers and intricate beadwork. Sarah recognized it immediately from her grandmother's descriptions. The ceremonial headdress of an Apache war chief, worn only by the most respected leaders during important battles or ceremonies. "You're not just an elder," Sarah realized. "You're the war chief of your band." Grey Wolf nodded, his weathered face solemn. "I am the last war chief of the Mountain Shadow Band. For 10 summers I fought the Blue Coats before making peace. Now Wilcox has broken that peace." "Why didn't you tell me before?" Sarah asked. "I needed to know if you were truly of our blood," he replied. "Many who claim Apache heritage would betray us for the army's gold." Swift Knife adjusted his weapon belt impatiently. "We must go. The lieutenant told Yellowbird that soldiers will search this cabin tonight." Sarah's head snapped up. "Hayes spoke with Yellowbird?" "When?" "At the High Canyon, hours ago," Swift Knife said. "He found us moving the children, but instead of calling his soldiers, he helped us hide our tracks." Sarah felt a surge of emotion, relief, gratitude, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. Hayes had fully committed himself to their cause, risking everything. "The lieutenant said to tell you that Wilcox has received a letter," Grey Wolf added, "from the store man in town." So Caleb's betrayal was complete. There was no going back now, not for any of them. "I need to gather a few things," Sarah said, turning toward her cabin. "Only what you can carry easily," Grey Wolf cautioned. "We have a difficult journey ahead." Inside, Sarah quickly collected essential items: her grandmother's journal, the medicine pouch, extra moccasins she had made for the children. As she reached for her husband's old hunting knife, a sharp knock at the front door froze her in place. "Miss Blackwood," Lieutenant Hayes's voice called. "May I speak with you?" Sarah motioned for Grey Wolf and the warriors to hide as she went to answer. Hayes stood on her porch, still in uniform, but with a haversack slung over his shoulder. Behind him, his horse was tethered to the rail. "Wilcox knows," he said without preamble as she let him in. "Turner's letter reached him an hour ago. He's ordered your arrest at dawn." "We were just leaving," Sarah replied. "Grey Wolf is here." Hayes showed no surprise as the Apache chief emerged from the shadows. The two men regarded each other warily. "Lieutenant," Grey Wolf acknowledged. "Chief," Hayes returned with equal formality. "I've brought something you should see." He withdrew a rough map from his jacket. "Wilcox has positioned men here, here, and here." He indicated points along the canyon rim. "The main force will sweep from south to north at dawn." Grey Wolf studied the map. "The high pass will be watched?" "Heavily," Hayes confirmed, "but there's another way." He traced a route along the western edge of the canyon. "It's longer, and there's a section where you'll be exposed, but the patrol schedule leaves a gap between midnight and dawn." "Why do you help us, soldier?" Swift Knife asked, suspicion evident in his voice. Hayes met his gaze steadily. "Because I've seen what Wilcox does to those he captures. Because these children deserve a future, and because—" he glanced at Sarah. "Some things matter more than orders." Grey Wolf looked between Hayes and Sarah, understanding passing across his weathered features. "The prophecy speaks of 2 bridges between worlds," he said cryptically. Perhaps this is what it meant. A distant sound caught their attention, horses approaching at a gallop. "We need to leave." "Now," Hayes urged. "That's likely a patrol coming to secure the cabin." Grey Wolf donned his war chief's headdress, a powerful symbol of leadership that would inspire his people for the dangerous journey ahead. "You will come with us, Lieutenant?" Hayes nodded, his decision made. "Yes, I can help you avoid the patrols." After that, he looked at Sarah, a question in his eyes. "After that," she said, taking his hand, "we find a new path together." They slipped away from Sarah's cabin moments before the patrol arrived, using the darkness and their knowledge of the land to move unseen. Hayes had abandoned his uniform jacket, wearing only his dark shirt and trousers, less conspicuous in the night. They traveled swiftly toward the high canyon, where the children waited with the rest of Grey Wolf's small band. "How many of your people survived?" Sarah asked Swift-Knife as they navigated a narrow ravine. 17, he replied grimly. "Mostly warriors, 3 elders and 2 women besides the children. Many died, covering our escape." The high canyon was actually a series of shallow caves and overhangs nestled in a difficult-to-access section of the mesa. When they arrived, Yellow, Bird ran to Sarah, embracing her fiercely. "I knew you would come," the girl said. Sarah hugged her back, then checked on the other children. Running Water had regained her strength, while the twins seemed excited by the adventure, too young to fully comprehend the danger. Little Fox was helping an elderly woman sort through a bundle of medicinal plants. Grey Wolf called everyone together, his headdress marking this as a formal council. Approximately 20 Apache gathered around, their faces solemn in the minimal light of a carefully shielded fire. "The soldiers come at dawn with many guns," Grey Wolf announced. "Our old paths to the north are watched. We must find a new way." An elderly woman spoke up. "The ancient ones had paths the white eyes never found. My grandmother spoke of cave drawings that showed the way." Hayes spread out his map on a flat rock. "Wilcox has men positioned along all the known passes. Even with the dawn songs, getting this many people past them undetected would be impossible." Grey Wolf turned to the elderly woman. "Dovewing, where? Were these cave drawings your grandmother spoke of?" "In the Cave of Voices," she replied, "where the old ones left their hand marks on the walls." Sarah's pulse quickened. "I know that place. Thomas and I found it our first year here. It's deep, in the Western Canyon, a cave where your voice echoes in strange ways." "Can you lead us there?" Grey Wolf asked. "Yes, but it's at least 4 hours' journey from here," Sarah cautioned. Hayes studied the map. "If we leave now, we could reach it before midnight. That still gives us time to find another route before the sweep begins." Grey Wolf nodded decisively. "We go now. Prepare only what you can carry easily." As the group prepared to move out, Sarah approached the cave wall where ancient handprints had been painted in ochre. She had always been drawn to these markings, feeling a connection to those who had left them centuries ago. Now, she studied them with new purpose, noticing how some seemed to point in specific directions. "My grandmother said these weren't just decorations," she told Hayes, who had joined her. "They're a map of sorts, showing safe paths through dangerous places." He traced one of the handprints with his fingers. "Can you read them?" "Not exactly," Sarah admitted, "but in the Cave of Voices, there are more elaborate drawings. If Dovewing is right, they might show us a path the army doesn't know about." Their journey to the Western Canyon was tense. Twice they had to freeze in place as cavalry patrols passed in the distance. The children remained remarkably quiet, even the twins understanding the need for silence. Hayes led them through gaps. In the patrol coverage, his intimate knowledge of the army's movements proving invaluable. When they finally reached the Cave of Voices, Grey Wolf sent scouts to secure the area while the rest of the group rested briefly. Sarah, Hayes, Grey Wolf and Dovewing entered the cave, their small lantern casting dancing shadows on the walls. The main chamber opened into a dome-like space where the ceiling rose at least 30 feet above them. The walls were covered with ancient paintings, hunting scenes, ceremonial gatherings, and abstract symbols whose meanings had been lost to time. "There," Dovewing pointed with a gnarled finger to a section of wall partly hidden behind a rock outcropping. Sarah held the lantern higher, illuminating what appeared to be a map etched into the stone. Lines representing canyons and mesas spread across the wall, with small symbols marking water sources, dangers, and safe passages. At the center was a clear depiction of their canyon system, and threading through it, almost invisible unless one knew to look for it, a thin line marking a path unknown to modern travelers. "The path of the ancient ones," Dovewing whispered reverently. "My grandmother said it leads through the mountains where no horse can follow." Hayes studied the petroglyph map intently. "It seems to follow this western ridge, then cut through. What looks like a narrow pass here. He pointed to a section of the drawing. "That's Standing Stone Mesa," Grey Wolf said. "The army believes there's no way through it." "According to this, there is," Sarah replied, tracing the faint line with her finger. "A hidden passage that comes out north of the blockade position." As they transcribed the ancient route onto Hayes's modern map, Sarah felt a strange sensation, as if her grandmother and countless ancestors before her were guiding her hand. This was why she had been drawn to this canyon, why she had learned the old ways, not just for herself, but for this moment when the knowledge could save lives. The ancient map revealed a path that wound through a narrow fissure in Standing Stone Mesa, a passage so slim and well hidden that it had escaped detection by both settlers and military surveys. According to Dovewing's interpretation of the symbols, the passage had been used by her ancestors during times of conflict with other tribes, long before the white men arrived. "We should rest before attempting it," Grey Wolf decided. "The children need sleep, and the passage is best navigated in daylight." "Daylight is when the sweep begins," Hayes reminded him. "We'll be vulnerable." "Not if we're already in the passage by dawn," Sarah countered. "The entrance is less than 2 hours from here if we take the high trail." They agreed to rest for 3 hours before moving on. As the others settled in the outer chambers of the cave, Hayes drew Sarah aside. "There's something I need to do," he said quietly, withdrawing a folded paper and pencil from his haversack. "Something to make official what I've already done in my heart." Sarah watched as he began to write, the pencil scratching softly against the paper in the lantern light. It was a formal letter of resignation from the United States Army, citing his inability to participate in actions he considered dishonorable and contrary to the principles he had sworn to uphold. "You don't have to do this," Sarah said softly. "Once you help us escape, you could return. Say you were captured." Hayes shook his head firmly. "No more lies. No more following orders I know are wrong." He looked up at her, his expression resolute. "I've been living a half-life, Sarah, just as you have. Caught between worlds, between what's expected and what's right." He continued writing, the words flowing more easily now. "When I walked away from you after learning of your Apache blood, I betrayed not just you but myself. I let others' prejudices dictate my actions. That was years ago," Sarah said gently, "and I've regretted it every day since." Hayes signed the letter with a decisive stroke. "This isn't just about you and me, though. It's about being able to face myself in the mirror. I cannot be part of what Wilcox is doing." Sarah understood his need for this formal break with his past. Just as she had straddled 2 worlds, never fully belonging to either, Hayes had been caught between his conscience and his duty. "What will you do after we reach safety?" she asked. "I haven't thought that far ahead," he admitted. "Find a place where no one knows me as Lieutenant Hayes, I suppose." "You could come with us?" Yellowbird's voice startled them both. The girl had approached silently, Apache style. "Grey Wolf says a man who knows the Blue Coat's ways would be valuable to our people." Hayes smiled at her. "Would your people accept a former soldier?" "They accepted her." Yellowbird pointed at Sarah. "And she's only half Apache." Sarah couldn't help but laugh at the girl's directness. "Yellowbird has a point." Hayes carefully folded his resignation letter and placed it in his shirt pocket. "I'll leave it somewhere it will be found," he said. "My final report to the United States Army." As Yellowbird returned to the other children, Hayes took Sarah's hand. "I never stopped thinking about you, you know. Even when I was following orders, hunting your people, I would remember the way you looked in the sunset by the creek, the way you knew the name of every plant and bird." Sarah felt the walls she had built around her heart beginning to crumble. "I tried to hate you," she admitted. "It would have been easier." "I deserved your hatred," he acknowledged. "No," she said, "you deserved a chance to choose differently, and now you have." A commotion from the cave entrance interrupted them. Swift. Knife hurried in, his expression tense. "Riders approaching from the south," he reported. "Many of them, moving fast." Hayes was immediately alert. "That's not right. The sweep shouldn't begin until dawn." Grey Wolf appeared beside them. "How far?" "Less than a mile," Swiftknife answered. "They carry torches." "Wilcox must have changed the plan," Hayes said grimly, "or received new intelligence." "We need to move now," Sarah urged, "before they cut off access to the passage." As the Apache band quickly gathered their few possessions, Hayes pulled Sarah aside once more. "Whatever happens," he said urgently, "stay with the children. Get them through that passage." "We'll all get through," Sarah insisted. Hayes touched her cheek gently. "If we're separated, I'll find you, I promise." The sincerity in his eyes made her throat tighten. "I'll hold you to that, Lieutenant." "Not Lieutenant anymore," he reminded her, patting his resignation letter. "Just James now." Sarah nodded, understanding the significance of that simple change. Just James and Sarah, finding a new path together. The band moved swiftly through the darkness, their path illuminated only by starlight and their knowledge of the terrain. Hayes and Swiftknife led the way, with Sarah and Grey Wolf guiding the children in the middle. The remaining warriors brought up the rear, watching for pursuit. "The entrance to the passage is just beyond that ridge," Sarah whispered, pointing to a jagged silhouette against the night sky. A narrow crack between twin boulders. The sound of distant hoofbeats spurred them to greater speed. Yellowbird carried one of the twins on her back, while Sarah carried the other. Running Water kept pace surprisingly well. Her strength returned after the healing at the sacred spring. As they approached the ridge, Sarah felt a growing sense of unease. The entrance to the passage should be visible by now, marked by the distinctive twin boulders she remembered from her explorations with Thomas, but the landscape looked wrong somehow, altered. "Stop!" she hissed, setting down the child she carried. "Something's not right." Hayes returned from his forward position. "What is it?" "The landmarks are different," Sarah explained, scanning the ridge with growing alarm. "The entrance should be right there, between those rocks, but—" A rumble of falling stone interrupted her. Little Fox pointed excitedly. "Look! The rocks move!" Horror dawned as Sarah realized what had happened. There must have been a rock slide recently. The entrance is blocked. Grey Wolf moved forward to inspect the pile of boulders and debris that now covered what should have been their escape route. "How long ago?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I haven't been to this part of the canyon in months." Hayes climbed partway, up the rock slide, testing the stability of the stones. "Some of this is still settling. It might have happened during the thunderstorm last week." He dislodged a smaller rock, revealing a narrow gap. "There's still a space, but it's too small for an adult to pass through." The hoofbeats were growing louder. Wilcox's men would be upon them soon. "We need to clear enough rocks to widen the passage," Sarah decided. "Everyone who can lift stones, start working. The rest, keep watch." They worked frantically in the pre-dawn darkness, passing rocks hand to hand down a human chain. Progress was agonizingly slow. For every stone they moved, others threatened to collapse and seal the passage completely. As the eastern sky began to lighten, Swiftknife reported from his lookout position. "Riders less than half a mile away. 20, maybe more." "We need more time," Sarah said desperately, wiping sweat from her brow despite the cool night air. Grey Wolf reached into his medicine pouch and withdrew a small deerskin bundle Sarah hadn't seen before. His own grandmother's medicine pouch passed down through generations of war chiefs. Inside were sacred herbs, known only to the most trusted medicine people. "The dawn songs," he said to Sarah, "all 5 together. With the medicine smoke they will give us the time we need." Sarah understood immediately. Her grandmother had spoken of this, how in times of greatest need, the 5 dawn songs could be sung together, their power multiplied when combined with certain sacred medicines. From her own medicine pouch, Sarah withdrew the small bundle of herbs she had been saving. "For an emergency. My grandmother gave me these before she died. She said they were for the time when all paths seemed closed." Grey Wolf nodded in recognition. "The sacred tobacco and sage, with my cedar and sweetgrass. we have the 4 sacred plants. Together, they prepared the medicine bundle while Hayes and the warriors continued clearing rocks. The children gathered around Sarah as she began the first dawn song, their young voices joining hers in perfect harmony. Grey Wolf lit the medicine herbs, their sweet smoke rising in the pre-dawn air. As the second song began, something extraordinary happened. A mist began to form in the canyon, thickening rapidly despite the dry air. By the third song, visibility had dropped to mere yards. "Keep working," Hayes urged the others, though his expression showed wonder at what was unfolding. The fourth song brought a strange effect to the sounds around them. The approaching hoofbeats seemed to echo from multiple directions, as if the canyon walls themselves were confusing the sound. As they began the fifth and final dawn song, Sarah felt something shift within her, a connection to the land and her ancestors so profound it brought tears to her eyes. The children's voices soared with hers, creating harmonies that seemed to resonate with the very stones. "The path is clear enough," Hayes called finally. "Children first." One by one, the children were helped through the narrow opening, followed by the elders and women. The mist continued to thicken, now so dense that Sarah could barely see Hayes. Standing beside her, "Your turn," he told her, guiding her toward the passage. "Not without you," she insisted. A shout from behind them cut through the mist. "There! I see movement!" The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the canyon. Swift Knife cried out, clutching his arm where a bullet had grazed him. "Go!" Hayes pushed Sarah toward the passage. "I'll hold them off with the warriors." "James, I'll follow," he promised. "Now go." Sarah reluctantly squeezed through the narrow opening, emerging on the other side where Grey Wolf waited with the children. The passage continued deeper into the mesa, just as the ancient map had shown. "The warriors?" Grey Wolf asked. "Still coming," Sarah replied, turning back toward the entrance. Through the small opening, she could see flashes of gunfire in the mist. Hayes and the Apache warriors had taken positions among the rocks, firing back at the cavalry to buy time for the others to escape. "We can't leave them," Sarah insisted, preparing to go back through the passage. Grey Wolf stopped her with a firm hand. "The warriors know what they do. Our duty is to the children." A familiar voice called from the opening. "Sarah, take them." "Deeper into the passage." It was Hayes, his voice strained. "Wilcox is here." Sarah hesitated only a moment before leading the group further into the narrow passage. The children moved swiftly, Yellowbird helping guide the younger ones. The passage twisted and turned, sometimes so narrow they had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Behind them, the sounds of battle continued, gunshots echoing strangely in the confined space. Sarah prayed silently for Hayes and the warriors, even as she focused on guiding the others to safety. After what felt like an eternity, the passage widened into a small chamber where several tunnels branched off in different directions. Sarah consulted the mental map she had memorized from the cave drawings. This way, she indicated the leftmost tunnel. It should lead to the northern side of the mesa. Just as they were about to proceed, running footsteps sounded from the passage. Behind them, everyone tensed, the older children positioning themselves protectively in front of the younger ones. Sarah clutched her husband's hunting knife, ready to defend them if necessary. Swift Knife emerged first, blood staining his sleeve. "Hurry!" he gasped. "They're coming!" 2 more warriors followed, helping a third who had been wounded in the leg. Last came Hayes, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, a cavalry rifle clutched in his hands. "Wilcox?" Sarah asked. "Still alive," Hayes replied grimly. "But we collapsed part of the entrance. It won't hold them for long, but it gives us a head. Start!" As if to emphasize his words, a distant rumble echoed through the passage, the sound of someone clearing the rockfall. "How many follow?" Grey Wolf asked. "At least 10 men made it through the mist," Swift Knife reported. "Wilcox leads them." They continued through the left tunnel, moving as quickly as the wounded could manage. The passage began to slope upward, the air growing fresher as they progressed. Light appeared ahead, not the warm glow of sunrise, but the cool blue of early dawn filtering through an opening. We're almost there, Sarah encouraged the exhausted children. The tunnel ended abruptly, at a narrow ledge overlooking a steep drop. Below stretched a hidden valley, lush with vegetation, fed by a stream that emerged from the rock face. The path continued along the ledge, gradually descending to the valley floor. "This is it," Sarah breathed. "The hidden valley from the ancient map." Grey Wolf nodded in recognition. "Our people spoke of this place in stories, a sanctuary in times of trouble." "It's beautiful," Yellowbird whispered, her eyes wide. Their moment of wonder was shattered by shouts echoing from the tunnel behind them. Wilcox and his men had navigated the passage faster than expected. "Go," Hayes urged, turning back toward the tunnel entrance. "I'll slow them down." "No." Sarah grabbed his arm. "We stay together." Hayes looked torn, but nodded. "Then we need another way to stop them." Sarah's mind raced. The ledge they stood on was narrow, the rock face smooth on one side and a sheer drop on the other. If they could somehow block the tunnel exit. "The acoustics," she said suddenly, remembering something from the Cave of Voices. "Sound echoes and amplifies in these passages." Understanding dawned on Hayes's face, like when we sang the dawn songs. Sarah turned to the children. "Yellowbird, remember the fifth dawn song I taught you? The one about the stones that listen?" The girl nodded eagerly. "We're going to sing it together as loudly as we can, all of us." As Wilcox's men approached the tunnel exit, Sarah began to sing, her voice ringing clear in the dawn air. The children joined in, then Grey Wolf and the other Apache adults. The song echoed off the stone walls, growing in volume and resonance until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Loose stones began to vibrate along the ledge. Dust sifted down from the tunnel ceiling. Inside the passage, men shouted in alarm. "Keep singing," Sarah encouraged, as the first of Wilcox's men appeared at the tunnel exit. Hayes raised his rifle, but before he could fire, a larger tremor shook the ledge. Cracks appeared in the rock face above the tunnel entrance. With a deafening roar, the weakened stone collapsed, completely sealing the passage and narrowly missing the Apache group on the wider section of ledge. When the dust settled, silence fell. The tunnel entrance had vanished beneath tons of rock. Wilcox and his men were trapped on the other side, alive but unable to follow. The stones listened. Yellowbird whispered in awe. Sarah knelt beside her. "They always do, if we know how." To sing to them, as they made their way down to the valley floor, Hayes fell into step beside Sarah. "I've never seen anything like that," he admitted. "The songs really do have power." "Not magic," Sarah corrected gently. "Knowledge. My grandmother understood how sound affects the world around us. The old ones built these passages to respond to specific harmonies. At the valley floor, they paused to rest, the children collapsing. In exhaustion, they were safe for the moment, but still had a long journey ahead to reach the northern territories where other Apache bands would welcome them.